Good morning, friends. I am going to be getting started here in just a couple minutes. I said 11:30 and I'm a little early, so we'll give it a minute or two. Give some people some time to join me and give you some time to maybe go grab a little more coffee or a little more tea or a mimosa. I'm not here to judge. Whatever works for you this morning. And we'll get started in just a minute or two. Good morning, Penny and Marcel and Bernie. How's everybody doing today? I hope it's nicer where you are than where I am. It's pretty gray and a little dreary today. It was gorgeous yesterday. I was hoping we were going to have another really pretty day, but that's okay. It's not snowing, right? And it could be. It did last week. So yeah. Oh, I'm a little jealous about your sunshine there. Hi, Lizzie. We're going to get started in just a minute. I actually was planning a trip to Chicago in July, but I don't think I will be making it this year. But that's okay. There will be other years to go to Chicago. Hi, Katrina. Oh, I am still sleepy. I know it's almost noon, but I'm a slacker this morning. I would, like I said, it's kind of gray, kind of a little dreary here this morning, so I just wanted to climb into my bed and stay there. But instead, I figured I would have a productive morning. All right, so it is 11:30, so I'm going to get started right on time. Today, I am going to do a pattern called Beelight, and it's one I actually really like a lot. And I think that it is often really overlooked. It's one of those patterns that doesn't look like a lot until you start doing some cool stuff with it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, all right. I didn't know that it was going to end up looking so cool. Yay for productivity, right? Yeah, absolutely. So this is your basic Beelight with just a little bit kind of a little added like ribbon border added in there so that it divided them up a little bit and kind of makes them pop off the page. If you haven't joined me for these little pattern exploration demos that I've been doing on Saturday mornings, what I like to do is I make a couple examples showing a couple different ways and I talk about them a little bit, and then I will demo the pattern itself, and then I will demo it in a couple other ways. Maybe give you some ideas, some creative ideas and thoughts to kind of spark your creativity. See if you can take a pattern that maybe you haven't played with very often and do something new with it. Maybe you never thought about doing it in that way. And so often we get in a rut, right? And we start drawing a pattern the way that we learned it, which is the way that maybe we were taught or someone showed us how to draw it, and it never occurs to us that we can take it in a completely different direction. So that was kind of my thought with doing these, and I have been revisiting some official Zentangle patterns, the ones that come out directly from Zentangle, to really kind of look at these, especially the ones that I think don't get enough love. So anyway, the pattern that I'm doing is called Beelight, and it's a grid tangle. I tend to shy away from grid patterns myself. I find them to be a little too structured most of the time, and I do get into a rut with them, right? So what's really funny is when I started planning this one, I usually try and do 6 patterns, and then at the end I kind of put together a little like a cheat sheet that I will put in the comments of this post later on, probably either today or tomorrow, and it will have the patterns that I did, and hopefully you can use that like a little idea sheet. And as I was playing with this pattern, normally I get stumped on my grid patterns, and I ended up with so many patterns that I had to narrow it down. So with this pattern, it's like I said, it's generally drawn right like this. I'm going to demo the pattern now, and then I will actually come back to how I did these other tiles and show that to you. So if you want to grab a tile and draw along, you're more than welcome to do so. If I get my hand in the way, someone please just shout out for me, because I tend to not necessarily watch the feed as I'm drawing, and then sometimes I forget what I'm doing. So I start with my dots. I do love my dots. And my border. One of the reasons that I struggle with grid patterns is because I don't really draw straight lines. I so rarely actually make a straight line that it seems a little weird to do it. And like I said, it's a little too structured for me. So I'm going to draw this pattern large, okay? Because if I go too slow, we're going to be here, or too small, we're going to be here all day. And while I would like to hang out with you, I actually have a class that I'm taking myself that I'm looking forward to later. So I made some lines. I made a line, and then basically I made auras. Okay, and I'm going to do that again. I turned my tile, I drew a line. I'm going to make some auras so that I have a grid. Okay. Now I'm also going to switch to a slightly larger pen to do a little bit of coloring in. So if you have a graphic or you have a larger pen to color in with, that's perfectly acceptable. Like I said, I don't want to take a very long time on just the basic demo today. So I have these like diamonds or like little kite shapes, right? So on one side, today I've chosen to go off to the left. I'm going to make like this little pie shape in each of them. Hi Krista, hi Chris, hi Maureen. Everybody's popping in today. So I'm going to make this little pie shape. It always reminds me of, if you remember Perfection, this was the shape of my favorite piece. It was like a little pie shape, and it fit in the little corner, kind of like this. So I've made these little curved lines, right? And then almost like a beak, if you were thinking about it, you know. So you got the little beak, and you could have a little eye and a little wing. Yeah. I haven't had enough tea this morning, everybody. You can tell. So now I'm going to go in, and I'm going to actually darken that in. I am not going to fill in all of these while I'm doing this demo today. I'm just going to do maybe these 4. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So I'm just coloring them in. You could actually fill this in with another pattern if you wanted to. It's a fun way to kind of mix up your patterns too. Along with, you know, varying the size, or maybe you color this in, maybe you don't color it in. That's going to give you a different look than just doing it where, you know, this is colored in and your lines are all the same size. If you mix it up even just a little bit, you're going to get a very, very different look. Okay? So I'm going to do 6 of these. And I'm moving kind of quick with this because this is the basic pattern. And you're going to see me draw this a lot in the next half hour or so. So I don't want to take up too much time showing you how to color in, right? Figure you already know how to do that part. So I'm going to start with one of the ones in the middle. Okay. And I'm going to aura this line, this curve, right? So I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to follow along that curve. I like to do that first one on every single one all at once, because we're going to add in a little bit of a sparkle. And sometimes if I don't do that first line, I forget. Okay, so I've done my first line, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to do another one, but I'm going to go almost halfway, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a space, and then I'm going to make another aura, and again I'm leaving a little space. I'm going to bring it just a little closer together, and I'm going to continue doing this, and I'm going to do a couple where that little gap is about the same distance apart, and then I'm going to make it a little closer together. Okay? You can vary that little gap too. So like here, I just left it wider. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it closer together again. Okay? And then I went completely all the way across. All right? And I'm going to continue to curve my line until it goes all the way to the edge. So I've auraed it all the way to the side. And this little striping, this little sparkle or highlight that creates looks really, really cool when you do it in about the same spot on all of them. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. Sometimes it's really fun to go back to patterns that you learned way back when. This was one of the first patterns I did, and I remember being not unimpressed with it, but it just didn't seem like something that was all that exciting the first time I did it, right? Like, I'm like, this is just a bunch of lines, and I'm not really getting anywhere with this. So as you can see, I'm making these closer together, almost touching, and then all the way, okay? So it's got that little squiggle, that little highlight, that little pop. Okay. And as I'm doing this on a couple, I make sure that I'm leaving that sparkle in about the same place. If you struggle with that, you can come in with your pencil and leave a very, very light little bubble or circle or little lines to kind of highlight it. So I'll demonstrate that right here. So I could go in and I could put, maybe I know that I want my highlight right there. So I want a little darker here than I would have if I wasn't demoing this, just so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. And you can use that to determine where you're going to leave your space open. Okay, hope that makes sense to everybody. And then, well, we always say that, you know, you don't need an eraser in Zentangle because there are no mistakes. If you were to want to use your eraser, as my good friend Sonia says, as a tool to remove it because you don't want that little pencil mark there, you could certainly do that, right? So I've got 4 done. I will come back and finish this later, but I don't want to spend a lot of time doing a lot of those right now. I am going to show you how to shade this really quick because it's super fun to watch this pop, right? So I'm adding a little bit of graphite around the edge of the grid, all in the same spot. I'll decide after I do this first bottom part, so like a V, I'll decide if I want to do the top. Okay, so I kind of did it curvy as I blended my graphite out, because when you get these done, they kind of look like little bees. I mean, kind of funky geometric bees, but little bees nonetheless. I assume that's where this name came from. Okay, so I like the way that looks, but they also look really cool if you shade in the other direction too. And then they really take on this 3D poppy kind of look. Okay. So that is your standard, your traditional, your normal Beelight. Okay. Which is a fun little tangle. And you can see that even with the just simply adding in a border here in between, you get a nice different look. All right, so I want to talk about this one a little bit because I'm not going, sorry, I bumped the thing there. I'll give it a minute to kind of stop swaying so that nobody gets queasy. So what I did with this is I actually, I did a tangle called Muka, and I used half of Beelight to fill in or accent my other pattern. So I kind of just wanted to show you this. You don't need to use the whole pattern. It doesn't need to be that kite shape, that diamond. So here I just have little triangles, but I used the same exact steps that I just took when I made the regular pattern. Okay, and that gives you a completely different look just using that fragment. Okay, this one looks really complicated, but it's really not. I'm going to show you on another tile that I started, and I did this one really big. Okay, so let's say this is my square, my grid square, or my diamond. And when I work on this pattern, I almost always turn my tile so that instead of my grid being straight up and down, it's at an angle. Okay, that way I can see it as that little point. So for this one, right, let me make sure you can see both of those. Get this out of the way, my messy little desk. All right, so I have it turned. So what we're doing is we're basically isolating one of these, right? So I have my little pie shape on one side, and I started to make my little sparkles. This one doesn't have the sparkles, but you could certainly do it with the sparkles. Okay, and then I made one that was the same size on the other side. Okay, and I'm just going to color this in really quick. And I'm not worrying about, you know, this looking really fancy, because this is just kind of a demonstration of how to do those little individual grid shapes. And then what I did was I did this larger piece that I'm doing here, I did in all of my squares. I think I need a new graphic pen. I tend to kill my pens. I use them until they don't work anymore, and then I have to get new ones. Okay, so again, I'm going to do my lines. that looks pretty even. And I'm gonna alternate until there. Okay, so that's basically all I did in each of these little squares. So by doing that, and I staggered them, right? So it's this one and this one and this one. They kind of stack together. So if I had two of these and I laid them next to each other, you can kind of turn them. And if you are going to do something like this, I encourage you to take a tile and make a big pattern and just kind of, even two of them, and just kind of play with how they work together. Okay. Let's see. So there's those two. And then, let's see, what else did I have for you? I have a border. And I specifically laid out my gridded border for you so that you can see, because like I said, I am not good at drawing grids. So you can see I have some little pencil lines in here. I went kind of light, so I don't know if you can see them really well. But then I already inked in the ones that I'm going to use. This is a simplified version of Beelight. So I went in and I added these little pie shapes, not just in one corner, but in two, all the way around, okay? And then I turned my tile and I added it again. And again, I'm using my larger pen so that you can see easier. Okay, I'm not going to color these in this time because I also would like you to see how different it looks when you don't color that in. Plus, then it saves a little bit of time for us. But also, you get a very different, much airier look. So then I went through and I added 2 auras around each of those little spaces. So around each of my little pie shapes, I added those 2 auras. I'm not going to do the whole thing because I have so many cool things that I wanted to show you. Okay. Sometimes when you're working from all 4 corners, it's easier to do what I'm doing here, which is to add my auras one at a time. That way, if I have to switch them in, like I said, I'm bad at grids. So these are not all the same size. They're not all at the same angle, but it's really not that noticeable as I, created it. But when I come in to add these auras, I might notice that they're a little wonky. And that's okay. Nobody ever really notices that. Nobody ever says, your line was not straight. Which is really a good thing, because like I said, I don't know that I've ever drawn a straight line in my life. Okay, working my way around. Adding in my little border, or in my little auras to create my border. Now I have this half done, so I have to decide, do I want to keep going? Do I want to add more auras until it's packed in tighter? Or do I want to come in here and do I want to do something like squish an orb in the center, right? Okay. Because that's going to give you even more complex visual look, right? So you can see, working with this way, that you're really your options are limited, or are unlimited. You can, you could color these all in, you could add a different pattern, you could play with it till the cows come home. And it's really fun when you start diving off into that kind of thing. And then where do you go from there? Right here, I have a border. I still don't even have anything in the middle, and it's already a fun tile. So once I had all this done, I could come in and I could add an aura, and then I could add something cool in the middle. Let's see here. All right. So I want to show you now one of my favorite ways to draw this, and it is not at all what you are probably going to expect from Beelight. And I did it the first time. It was accidental. It was going to be another pattern, and then I don't know, I kind of went off on a tangent, and I went, oh, that looks really cool. And a lot of my favorite tangulations of tangles have come exactly that way. So again, I'm going to set my tile on an angle because I find it easier to work that way with this pattern. And I am going to create, it's almost an eye shape or a pea in a pod shape, something like that. So instead of going with a square grid, I'm making something that looks like a chain, okay? I'm gonna come back in. I'm gonna add my pie shape. I'm gonna darken it in, make it look all fun and cool. This one, if you maybe wanted to make a bird, or if you wanted to make something that looked like little fishies, this is a fun one to do for that because it gives you that built-in little face shape. And it's unexpected. Beelight, people think grids. You always think that a grid has to be square, but grids can be round. You just don't necessarily think about it that way. So this way, doing it like this, they actually really do look like little bees, which is fun for me because I love bees. I'm adding that sparkle again. So I'm just leaving those little gaps in my lines as I go. As far as I want, right before I go to a solid line, I'm going to bring them closer together. These little, adding these little auras, these little lines is lovely because it's like a line meditation. You're just paying attention to that one line. There's nothing super complex to what you're doing. It's when you add it all together that it takes on that fun dimension, right? Okay, so there's that rounded. So now what I'm gonna do, and I always like to do one row first, is if you make another row, and this is one of those tricky things. I mean, maybe you're really, really good at making this shape. This shape is one of those shapes that it's hard for me to keep it even, and it's a little weird with spacing sometimes. But once I get it, it's really forgiving, and you get these neat negative spaces in between your grid, which are fun to play with too. Okay. gone off the page with these here, and that's okay. And over here, maybe I can just see a little bit. All right. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Debbie. You snuck in there. If I missed you as you snuck in, hi. Good morning. I hope you're having a great day. Like I said, these patterns that we're doing as we go over them, none of it is terribly complicated. It's taking the pattern and trying to look at it in a new way and thinking, what other fun things can I do with this? How can I take this and turn it into something else? Thanks, Brenda. My bee lines that look like little bees here. Yeah. So, all right. So there's 2 rows of this. I could go in and I could add, I don't know, something fun in there. I could just aura inside of here. In fact, that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to just aura this line. All the way around. And that's going to create some interest in there and give me something else fun to work with. So because I have so much dark in there, I'm actually going to darken that in. And when I finish that tile, it's really going to make everything pop off the page. And that's super fun. I was telling a friend of mine doing lives and doing Zoom classes and everything is so weird because I always feel like I'm talking to myself. And while I do that, or I talk to my pets a lot, it feels a little strange to be demonstrating what I'm doing and talking to myself. So if I ever kind of seem to wander off in my head, that's why. So, and then I would shade these ones. I would turn my tile, and I like to shade the round ones in both directions. I think it's because they actually remind me of bees. And see how this one's kind of not really evenly shaped? That's okay, it just looks kind of fun. Again, they don't have to be perfect. I tend to not put a lot of graphite over when I've done a solid black spot. Sometimes it looks shiny, and sometimes it just doesn't blend nicely on my pencil, and I don't like that. I just don't like the way it feels. But that's a personal choice. You could, if it's easier for you to blend to go all the way into your dark, go right ahead. These almost look like little cocoons when I turn them this way, like butterfly cocoons. I must be thinking spring. Bees and butterfly cocoons and flowers. All right, so that's another way to do it, is in a round. And I've got one more. And I don't know if I've never seen anyone draw bee lines this way. And it's funny because before I do these little demos, sometimes I Google the pattern to see what other people have done, because if everybody's doing it a certain way, I don't want to demo that. That's silly. I would rather give you things that maybe you haven't thought of before. And I have not seen anyone do this way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create a curvy kind of line. Okay. And then I'm going to turn my tile just a little bit, and I'm going to make that diamond shape. Okay. I'm going to tilt it just a little bit more. I'm going to add in another one. Tilt it just a tiny bit. These look like kite shapes to me. Okay, those little diamonds, those little kite shapes. And then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to make a curvy stem, or little line there. And then I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to make another little kite. I'm going to turn it. Okay. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go up in the other direction. Make another little kite shape. Okay. So what I have here, I'm going to add in a little line here, and I'm going to do little one. And you could add more than 3. I just like it with the 3. Is you actually have created forms for little abstract flowers. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add my little face shape, that little pie on each one. I'm going to do it on the corner that is closest to that, that piece that almost looks like a stem. You can color that in or you can leave it as is. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm having a hard time talking this morning. I must not have had enough caffeine. And then I'm going to create my aura. And I'm going to do this like I always do beeline. Okay, so I've got my little highlight. I'm adding my auras. All the way to the corner. Oh, good, Brenda. I'm glad that they're all new to you. I like that. You always have such great ideas, so it's nice to know that I've come up with stuff you haven't thought of. That's so much fun. I love that we can all learn from each other. I was in one of the Zentangle groups the other day, and someone was saying that they were afraid to post that their work wasn't good enough. And I always hate to see that because we all start at different places, right? And we're all at different levels, and we've all been beginners, and we've all been brand new. And, you know, I make tiles all the time that look not very good, that I don't, and those aren't necessarily the ones that I'm posting. And I was trying to explain to people that it's perfectly okay to not make perfect tiles, and it's okay to post those too. Sometimes, even if it's not executed the way you wanted it to, and I so very rarely execute the tiles that I'm showing you in these demos perfectly, right? These are not going to be the best tiles I ever made, because sometimes it's just to get an idea out there. And it's okay to go back and redo a tile that maybe you made that you didn't give your full focus, and you want to revisit that idea. And I encourage you to do that if you haven't done it before, right? So you can see how this is a complete deviation from, you know, your normal straight up and down grid. This isn't, it isn't blocky, it isn't locked in, it's abstract, it's a different direction, which is really what I'm hoping you will take some of these patterns that I've revisited and do for yourself. You know, we don't always have to draw a grid pattern in a grid. We don't always have to draw a square pattern in a square. Sometimes it's okay if it's round or if it's in a triangle. We don't always have to draw something that's supposed to be round in a round way. I think it was last week I did a traditionally rounded pattern, and I did it in square shapes. So don't be afraid to play with it. We call it Zentangle practice because practice is what we do, right? and have fun with it. It's supposed to be fun. There we go. All right, and one more. As you notice, I'm turning my tile as I go. I do it all the time. I don't necessarily say it out loud, but you don't want your hand to get fatigued. If your hand is really, really tired, unless you've been drawing all day, then you're gripping your pen too tight. That's a do as I say, not as I do kind of tip, because I am really bad about that. So now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to kind of thicken up these little stems a little bit. Just to add a little bit more interest. Maybe a little swirl or two, just for fun. And there you go. So I'm going to shade these. All I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add some graphite right down the center in between these petals, these Beelight petals. And I'm going a little heavy, but not too heavy. And then I'm going to take my tortillon and I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. And I know a lot of people use little circles. That's never been very intuitive for me, so I tend to not do that. I use my tortillon much like I use the side of my pencil. And while that's really effective for me, it does wear your tortillon out a little faster. So whatever works for you. I had someone ask me the other day in a class if your tortillons can be cleaned or if they can be sharpened. And this feels like a good time to mention that. I use little emery boards that are meant for acrylic nails. And I take my tortillon and I just kind of rub it on the side until I get rid of all the dirt, and then I have a sharpened, cleaned tortillon. I normally wouldn't mention that, but with the pandemic and maybe your shopping is a little bit delayed, or you can't get the things that you want, or you only have one tortillon in between, you can, that's an option. Allison, yes, sandpaper works too. I just happen to have some emery boards on hand. So, and I really like the size. I don't even know where I got it. I've had it forever. And it's in with my art stuff now. So, that lets me, so now my tortillon doesn't have too much graphite on it, so I can soften that a little bit more. If you don't have too much on there, you can also always, let me see if I can find another one that has a little bit more. Yeah, so this one has some graphite on it. So the other thing you can do is you can actually, this won't work quite as much, but you can scrub it off on the back of a tile. I like to take tortillons that have a lot and I use them for when I want to shade orbs, because I don't like to add heavy graphite to my orbs. I just like that light little look. So I save them till I need to shade a bunch of orbs, and then I use it to scrub off some of that graphite on those orbs. All right, so I'm going to call this done. I hope that you have some new ideas. So here's border one, and then here's a very similar border, but with a couple little quirks to it. Okay. Here are your flowers, your rounded bees, Beelight with a border, a flat bee, I got sidetracked. Krista was posting something cool about bees. That's really cool. If you didn't see it, Krista posted a neat thing about where the phrase beeline came from. And it's down in the comments, and you should really read it. It's cool. So, oh, and then here is a variation on straight beeline. So does anybody have any questions about this cool tangle? Does anybody use this one a lot? That's what I was thinking, because I don't see it a lot in people's work. And it's a really fun tangle to draw. And it has so many varieties that I think that it gets overlooked. And I would really love to see what you do with it, especially if you do something neat and fun that maybe we haven't seen before. So, if you do, please feel free to reach out, send me a picture, post it, and, you know, kind of stay in touch. All right. I see a lot of you have never used it before. Hi, Jason. I didn't see you pop in there. The flower is a lot of fun. It was something that I was doing something else and it just kind of happened. And now it's a happy accident and I use it a lot. It merges nicely with a lot of organic tangles, especially because it has kind of that funky little flare to it. So it adds a bit of a geometric shape to maybe a bunch of soft angles. All right. So like I said, I hope that you have a few ideas there. Oh, and I knew I was missing one. Also, you can use it as, sometimes when I make examples, haha, there we go. I flip stuff over. So this one, like I said, you can use it as a fill for other patterns. Don't be afraid to play with it, to only use part of it. I will see you next Saturday if I don't see you before. Tomorrow I'm doing an actual Zoom class called Line Dancing with Paradox. So if you have anyone that wants to take a class on Paradox, send them my way. And I will see you all soon. Everybody have a great Saturday and do something fun.